Seed is the primary form of reforestation for our agency and public lands. So it really all starts with seed. Inside of this ponderosa pine seed, you can see an embryo.
As a national seed specialist on the Deschutes National Forest,
And there's small striations here on one end, and those are actually going to be our first needles.
Kayla Harriman embodies her job title.
And this white end that you see down here is actually what we call the radical end, and that is going to be the root.
Knowledge and expertise that led her to a project that's out of this world.
I knew about moon trees, but I never really thought that that would be something that would come around again.
In January of 1971, Apollo 14 headed to the moon.
This is really a wild place up here.
On board, hundreds of tree seeds.
There isn't a lot known in terms of where Stewart got his seed or how he chose the species that he chose.
Astronaut Stuart Rosa, a former smoke jumper, carried the organic payload in with his personal gear.
And on the surface.
While crew members Alan Shepard and Edgar Mitchell were on the moon, Rosa and the seeds were orbiting high above in the command module.
And around we go.
When the seeds returned to Earth, they were planted around the country, including right here in Oregon.
Actually, one not far from where I grew up in Portland.
The Moon Tree Project took root.
At the time, it really got people interested in space and forestry and science in general.
51 years later, NASA set sights to get back to the moon, and tree seeds were part of Artemis 1's cargo.
Think about how we could improve the idea of moon trees and learn a little bit more than maybe we learned the first time.
Call it Moon Trees version 2.0, a partnership with the Space Agency and the U.S. Forest Service.
This time we were really selective in where that seed came from.
Seed specialist Harriman, along with colleagues from other Forest Service facilities, worked to source the best seed from around the country to make the journey.
We sent giant sequoia, loblolly pine, Douglas fir, American sycamore, and sweet gum seed.
The same species Rosa carried, professionally packaged
This is the payload ravioli.
for blastoff.
This is something that we came up with here at the Bend Seed Extractory to minimize packaging.
6mm plastic pouches that resemble a classic Italian pasta, designed to protect the seed from moisture.
We didn't want this seed to germinate in space where it didn't have soil.
The seeds spent 25 days, 10 hours, and 53 minutes in space.
Orion, back on Earth.
After splashdown, the ravioli returned to the Forest Service Seed Extractory in Northeast Bend.
We weighed the seed, and we actually did an X-ray to look at the internal tissue of the seed.
To study the effects of a trip 268,563 miles from planet Earth.
No significant difference.
One impact of space travel happened right here on the ground, a delay.
So NASA 1 was on the capsule for months before launch, and NASA 2 was only on the capsule for weeks before launch.
Florida's warm, humid weather giving seed specialists another variable.
This is a really great thing for us in the Forest Service because that gave us an ability to understand temperature and humidity dynamics and how that affects seed sitting on the rocket ship for quite some time.
Fresh off their trip around the moon, the seed were sent to Forest Service nurseries around the country. Liftoff, of sorts. The seeds were successfully germinated this fall. These special trees will be planted at public institutions in their native ranges.
Oh, it's gonna get cold. This facility in particular stores about 68,000 pounds of seed for restoration across the country on public lands.
The moon tree seed will hang out here in a chilly 15-degree Fahrenheit freezer, much warmer than the negative 455 degrees of outer space, allowing seed specialists like Kayla an opportunity for further research if NASA decides to send any more tree seed to the final frontier. And in what might be the real mission of the Artemis moon trees?
The Forest Service worked with NASA to create programs that are geared towards elementary school students to get them excited about both forestry and space.
With no set launch date for Artemis 2's 10-day crewed lunar flyby mission, there's time to grow interest in America's efforts to put people back on the moon. All thanks to an out-of-this-world science experiment and educational campaign whose orbit goes right through Bend. In Bend, Steve Kaufmann, Central Oregon Daily News.